Yesterday, I made a video talking about Donald Trump and what I thought his legacy would be as our 45th president. And I said it would be the positives of his presidency. So yeah, again, if you're seeing this video and you're like, this dude just said President Trump and positive in the same sentence, go ahead, leave me a comment, send me some hate mail, totally cool with it. But today I want to talk about what I think were some of the negatives of his presidency. And the reason I do that is because there's too many people on both sides of the aisle where they get so glued to whoever it is that they support, and they can't speak out against any of the bad things that their candidate does. Like I said, too many people do it, and I don't really want to participate in that type of thing. I want to be someone a little more balanced and in the middle. So with this particular video, we're going to start off small, and then we're going to work our way into what I think were some of the biggest negatives of the Trump presidency. So hopefully you stick around and you hear out what I have to say. But first and foremost, we have to talk about not only President Trump and his love for Twitter, but obviously his antics as well. That's kind of what this picture emulates. And, you know, you can absolutely get into, maybe you say, well, I liked his, his style. He was a political outsider and he shook things up. I would totally agree with you there. That's definitely a positive at times, because what I'm trying to say is there were certain instances where I think he took it way too far. I remember early on in his presidency, it had to be in 2017, I believe Arnold Schwarzenegger took over The Apprentice, and, whatever. Yeah, the ratings weren't as good because Donald Trump wasn't, the host of the show. So President Trump is then tweeting, talking about the ratings that are collapsing on The Apprentice. And it's kind of like, dude, we elected you to be president. Like, go, you said you were going to make America great again. Go and make America great again. Who cares about The Apprentice right now? And that's just kind of a small example. But I think throughout his presidency, there were absolute instances where he just bumped into coffee table after coffee table. And he just laid himself so open to attacks based on what he would say, So I feel, even if you think his style was a positive, at times, I still have to call it out and say, yeah, but it also came with a lot of drawbacks as well. So that's kind of the first reason, I think, or the first negative rather, of his presidency. And we'll get into the next one. So this is the U.S. debt clock. And if you were to type in exactly what you see at the top, usdebtclock.org, this would actually open you up to a site, and it would show you the dollars actually moving, like how much money we're spending every second. So the two numbers I want you to take away from this particular post is, well, first and foremost, we added $7 or $8 trillion these last 4 years. Okay, so our total debt is fastly approaching $28 trillion. And the average debt per citizen now, right? If you were to take that 28 trillion and you were divided up evenly from U.S. Citizens, it's over $60,000 per citizen, which is insane. So this is a blemish because, when people voted for him in 2016, they really thought he was going to bring this business mindset where he would balance the budget, and he would, run things a little more efficiently. And obviously, as I'm reading the numbers, that obviously was not the case. So the reason why I'm so against government spending is because I understand it means that we're printing dollars that we don't have, which means the dollar itself, the ones that you and I spend, well, they get devalued over time. So what you wind up running into is inflation, and that hurts us, and really it doesn't hurt the ones that are already at the top. So that's the reason why I think this is an absolute blemish on his presidency. You can talk, leave me a comment. You can let me know if you think otherwise, if you think there were other reasons why the debt wound up going up, or if we shouldn't worry about the debt. This particular image is showing us the trade deficit. So you can see, I think it backs all the way up to the early 90s, but I want you to focus on the 2016 to 2020 timeframe, because that's obviously when President Trump, when he was our president. So the red is our exports and the blue is our imports. So you can see which numbers are bigger. And if hopefully you can actually read the numbers themselves, you can see in the blue you have, I think it's 575.8, and then it looks like you have like 153.9 as our exports. All right, you do the math, you subtract it, well, that's 400 some odd billion dollars, that we're in as a trade deficit. So it doesn't really look like we won the trade war. That was something that he wanted to do. I think if maybe over time, if we can get more businesses and manufacturing to come back here, you can see that number, start to close in on itself. But, the way it is right now, and obviously the 2020 shutdown didn't help, but there's so much manufacturing that we shipped overseas. It's going to be tough to bring it back, and I don't see it coming back these next 4 years. Hopefully I'm wrong. But we'll keep chugging along. So then you got the border wall. This was probably one of his biggest campaign promises. And, you know, he fell short on it, guys. Yeah, I'm sorry. You can absolutely find examples where the border wall itself, in certain areas, it was reconstructed, right? Like they tore down whatever was there and they put new wall up. I think they put a couple, you know, I think the last I checked, it was like 200 or 300 miles extra or of new border wall. But it's not complete. It's far from complete, and it's something that he said he was going to get done, and it didn't get done. So that's a blemish, right? Because you can say, well, he didn't deliver on that particular promise. And don't let me lose you yet, because I'm going to kind of talk about this a little bit later on in the conclusion of the video about why I don't think this happened. Okay, but now we're going to talk about the virus, the bug that went around. So it doesn't really matter what camp you're in, because you might be someone on the left that says, well, yeah, of course we had a pandemic during Trump as president because he's an idiot, right? And then you might be someone that leans to the right, or you're a Trump supporter and you're like, well, the reason why we had it, you know, had the virus spread was because, you know, President Trump was ruffling the wrong feathers and this was an excellent way to get him out of office. Those are really the two takes. All I can say is no matter what your take is, it happened during his presidency. So regardless how you feel about him and his handling of the virus itself, it's going to be a blemish on his presidency. It's when people talk about President Trump in the future, I'm talking about when he's in history books at one point, this is really going to be synonymous with his presidency. So it's going to be a blemish, whether you think he's to blame or not. It's going to be synonymous with him. And we'll move on. This is probably one of the last photos I have, but really, you know, towards the end of his presidency, you had the riots at the Capitol Hill. And again, you can get into whether he caused it, whether he's to blame for it. Kind of irrelevant. All I'm trying to say is this is going to be another image that's synonymous with his presidency. And they're really going to be able to use it any way they want to. They're going to say he incited these people and he's an absolute threat. You know, whether you like it or not, this is just something that they're going to be able to use against him for years to come if he decides to run in 2024, you know, so on and so forth. But I can go on and on. And I can make this like a 30-minute video talking about every little example that I didn't agree, or, you know, every little example I thought was negative revolving around his presidency. I mean, just a couple more off the top of my head. You know, when he campaigned in 2016, one of his sons is actually a pretty avid hunter, and there were talks about the Hearing Protection Act, which would make suppressors, they wouldn't be on the NFA item list, so that way they'd be much more affordable to people who would want to purchase them, because you have to do like a whole $200 tax stamp and, you know, all this crazy stuff to get it. And then there was also talks of national reciprocity that obviously never happened. But again, you can go on and on and on, and it could be a never-ending video. So what I do want to say is, at the end of the day, you know, another thing Donald Trump ran on was he was going to drain the swamp. And unfortunately, the swamp prevailed. And the reason for that is because, unfortunately, I think we learned the hard way that you can't just have a president in there that is fighting for you. You need to have members of Congress, so people in the House, people in the Senate, that are going to carry out that same agenda. So it really goes to show you how many layers there are to our government. So the president itself, they're really just a cheerleader, in my opinion, because there's, like I've already said, there's so many other layers to our government. It can render a president obsolete. For example, Democrats had control of the House the last 2 years of Trump's presidency. You didn't really get anything done. You just had Donald Trump owning the libs 24/7. So you might be happy with that, but, you know, I obviously wanted to see more policies go through. So, you know, you might agree with some of the stuff I said. You might disagree with some of the stuff that I said. Leave me a comment, because it's good to hear from different people. You might not like everything I had in this video, and hey, you might think that there was something I left out. Let me know. Because again, you can go on and on. You're going to get different perspectives, people with different biases, but it's always healthy to have some political discourse as long as it's civil, right? So hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you think because I said some negatives revolving around Trump's presidency that means I'm now a far leftist. Or you can let me know if maybe you watched my video from the other day and you lean to the left and you're like, oh my God, you support Trump and you said there were positives. You're awful. Listen, that's cool too. There's no such thing as bad press, right? But as always, I appreciate you checking out the video, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.